Good afternoon, Assalamu alaikum, and welcome to my show, Raising Positive Women. I'm Shareen Ellahi, and I am joined in the studio today by Em, who's also known as Umbreen, who's an advocate for female education. We'll be speaking to her a little bit later on, and we'll be discussing her experience of raising positive women. Now, last week we talked a lot about access to education, we talked about our upbringings, we talked about our culture and how that has a huge impact on the way that we raise girls, the way that we raise children. And we all agreed that the importance of raising women well has a huge impact on the way that our future society is going to be. Now, in researching this show, I came across a great quote that I'm sure a lot of you have come across as well. And it was, if you educate a man, you educate an individual. If you educate a woman, you educate a generation. And that is so poignant in today's show. So without further ado, let's introduce Em, who is going to talk to us about some of the work that she has done for a charity called... Actually, let's introduce her and then she'll tell us a little bit more about it.
Assalamu alaikum. Thank you so much, Shareen, for having me on. I'm the founder of a charity called Rising Girl. And the whole reason we found it is because we feel that every girl should have the opportunity to rise, whatever her situation or circumstance. And we found that this wasn't happening at the moment, the actual work that we're doing. So that's why we thought, let's start right at home in the Midlands, as we are. So we're in Birmingham, and we want to come into Wolverhampton and Coventry and all the different areas. We work in schools. So what we do is we have a 6 to 8 week interactive, really fun workshop that we deliver in schools every week for 2 hours for up to 6 to 8 weeks, and it covers lots of subjects that our girls face, so such as forced marriage, domestic violence, which at the moment because of COVID-19 you'll know it's up by up to 25%, and things like honor-based violence, mental illness, all of these issues we cover, but we cover it in a really fun way. And we found that a lot of the girls started opening up and talking, but one of our objectives is for all these girls to stay on in school. So we work with girls up to from 11 to 18, and then we do a pre and post kind of program survey, and we found that in our pilot less than 50% of the girls would have stayed on education at the age of post 16, and then at the end it was more than 97% who were like literally, we're staying on, we're gonna smash our barriers, and we're gonna literally be these amazing women that we've always dreamt of being. And it's all because we've empowered them to give them the knowledge, the skills and the information that they need to overcome these obstacles. And then we inshallah, after COVID-19 is under control, we want to launch a similar program in Pakistan, but working with university students aged 17 and 25.
Yeah, it's so powerful. So what you actually do is give girls the opportunity, don't you? You give them the chance to continue their education. How does that work in family situations in terms of they might want to, but how do you deal with situations where you've got a dad who's probably quite fundamentally finds it hard to appreciate the value of education, or you've got a mum who's a little bit more of, she takes very care of the domestic aspects of a household but isn't the decision maker. How does that work?
So we actually work directly with the schools rather than the community, but what we do is we ask the school to get permission from the parents to make sure that they're fully aware of what this program is. So the parents they have a letter, and they're also invited into schools, and they can talk to us and the schools about the program, so they have the full knowledge of what their daughter will be taught and the skills that she will learn. And that's kind of how we communicate with them. But one of the things that we found is that you're right, a lot of mothers are very supportive. We found that there wasn't so much objection with the mothers. A few of the schools weren't really worried, but we found some of our funders were asking us questions, and it's always the non kind of BAME funders who ask us questions such as is the community going to be okay with this, following Trojan horse, following all the other issues that we've had with the LGBT issues. So obviously everyone's a little bit frightened of what the community say. And we said, well, touch wood, so far we haven't had an issue because we're not doing anything wrong. All we're doing is providing girls an education where they can be safe, and then where they can kind of aspire to be these amazing women that they want to be. We're not teaching them anything negative. We're teaching them to be safe. We're teaching them to be secure, and we're teaching them how to overcome their obstacles. And when we actually started, we actually went to the UK's biggest children's charity, Barnardo's, and we asked them to come on board with this because they're not doing this program, anything like this, working with girls that we're working with. And they agreed, so they are one of our partners in our delivery of these programs. And we hope we can scale this up and go nationwide because there is a big need for this. And obviously, you've seen, unfortunately, because of COVID-19, everyone's cooped up at home under lockdown, and unfortunately some people are facing abusive situations day in and day out, and they don't know how to overcome those situations. So we found in our schools that they knew the number of Childline, but they didn't know any other helpline, website, any other links, any other ways that they can get help. So I think what we're doing is having a really positive effect, not just on the girls, but on the community, because some of the girls opened up about the abuse happening in their house, which doesn't affect them directly, but indirectly. But like one of the girls spoke about her mother who was suffering from domestic violence for a long time. But this girl had no idea how to help her mother. But because we've given her the education and the skills, she now feels empowered to help her mother get through this difficult period.
That's so powerful, isn't it? And I think what you've really brought home is the idea that in order to get a better society, in order to get future generations that are well read, well spoken, that are, aware of globally the issues that we face and want to better themselves, like it starts at home, doesn't it? And it's not just going to be instantly our society is going to turn around and say, actually, let's be more aware of the topics and the issues that are important to us. It's going to start from grassroots. So it's going to be educating those girls, because when they become mums, they're the ones that they're going to make the changes in their household, right? Because like my mum always says, like, we didn't know any better at the time. We did what we did because that's what everyone did. But as generations have progressed, like what I said last week as well, we didn't have bedtime when we were growing up. What was it like for you? There was very little routine, right? It was just the good old days where everyone went to bed really late. You hung out at your uncle's house. Everyone chilled out. It was just always a party. It was always something going on. But the difference now is, we've realised how important routine, structure is at home, how important it is to value, the importance of getting your homework done, getting your schoolwork done, being on board on that journey. So, like in our house now, I parent different to the way that my mum parents. Like I'm super strict. My kids go to bed at 7. They have set meal times. They have to do their homework as soon as they get in. They have to do extracurricular activities. The lifestyle is very, very different. The point I guess I'm trying to make is, if we know better, we do better. So now it's how do we spread that knowledge? How do we spread that information to our pockets of our community that are still a little bit hesitant? How do we kind of do that? And what you're doing is right. You're raising that awareness in the community and saying to these girls, look, you can have better for yourself. This is how you do it. So the girls that you inspire to be better and to do better it has a real positive effect on them. What would you encourage them to do? Say, for instance, if you've got a girl who she really wants to go on to sixth form or college, she wants to study, her parents and her home life is difficult and people are hesitant, what would you encourage her to do?
What I'd say is, and what you said about structures is so fundamentally important, because when I was growing up, my parents are amazing, but there really wasn't any structure.
That was the way, right? Back then, like everyone chilled.
There wasn't. We didn't go to bed at a certain time, although about 10:30 my parents were shouting at us upstairs. But literally, my son, literally 7 o'clock, he was in bed. Mm-hmm. So it's very different. And it's because we educate. I literally read Miriam Stoppard's book on how to bring up a child. My mum didn't do that.
It's a different.
So it's all very different. But yeah, moving to these actual girls. So I think the most important thing is to start from scratch, because what we do in the program is after every workshop, we get them to do a little fun questionnaire about how they've improved and what they need, and kind of how this program is benefiting them or not, so we can find out what the issues are. And the first thing to do is to find out what are their obstacles, because although we initially did a massive survey and we had focus groups and we found all the research to do this program, the thing is each individual girl would have different issues. We find out what her issue is, and then we try and help her overcome that issue, because if she doesn't overcome that barrier, she won't be able to move further. As much as her ambitions are huge, if she keeps hitting that barrier, she won't be able to move forward. So we try and focus on that barrier, and we try to overcome that barrier, and we have like within our kind of workshops, we actually play, we draw, it's actually really fun. You can see them laughing and enjoying themselves, and then once we overcome that barrier, what we do is we see how that's affected her. So if she's managed to overcome that barrier, we've taught her the skills, which is fantastic. What we do is we try and ask them, kind of work out what they want to do in the future, and then we try and bring in a person from industry, a person from banking or teaching, to come and inspire them, almost like a role model.
So just a mentorship program.
Oh, almost, but it's
Okay.
a one-off. So she'll come in for a small amount of time, and she'll say, right, who do you think I am? I love that, because when people come in, I mean, as I was talking to you earlier, one of the trustees, Rifat, who's now in Germany, but she's from Birmingham originally. She basically, at the end of our first pilot, it was at the end of the school semester as well, summer term. We did a certificate giving to the girls, so well done. And she came with 3 other women, all Pakistani women, because this is the makeup of the school. All of them from similar backgrounds to the girls at that school. So Rifat said, right, I'm from Birmingham, but I now live in Germany. I was in London. I work for Hugo Boss. I've got this great life. Where do I come from? And, when she was saying that, there was 900 girls in that hall. They were like, wow. And they could not guess where she came from. They thought maybe an affluent background. Maybe she had a great life. She said, no, actually, I was just like you. I'm literally from up the road. And she goes, my parents didn't really believe in education. They thought, okay, fine, you're going to school, but do everything else. Do your chores, do your housework, help us, do cooking and cleaning. And then if you've got time, then you can go and, finish your homework. And she won this amazing prize, which the national competition. Her mom didn't understand the value of that. So kind of, that's why she was so passionate to join Rising Girl. So this is what we do. We bring in these women who were actually just like them to inspire them. And literally, if you saw the faces on these girls in assembly, their faces, the jaws dropped. One girl, a woman, amazing woman. She's a diplomat now, and she came and said, right, I'm a diplomat, and I work for the government, and I've advised 6 prime ministers or leaders, and they were like, wow, she must come from some amazing background. And she's like, nope, I was just like you once upon a time. So they get a chance to interact with these women who were just like them, because I think it's really important for them to find, for us as a charity as well, to find people to work with who are aligned with our values, and who were those girls once upon a time. And that really is the kind of inspiration. And then what we'd like to do in the future is bring in more people from different like corporations and banks, where the girls think, actually, we do have the opportunity to go into this sector, because this person's just told us that they want people like us. So this is the kind of thing we hope to work and develop and kind of build these skills within our kind of program, because at the moment, although we've got 8 workshops, we want to take that to 12, 14, 18, and then kind of move this further. But what I must say is, some of the girls that I spoke to in some of the schools, because I was so passionate about this, tried to go in as much as I could to see the progress. Some of them hadn't even left their own area, and they were 13, 14, 15. So their life was that area that they live in.
Why do you think that is? What's the worry?
I think a lot of it's got to do with, although, some may not, a lot of their moms are homemakers. So that some of them don't necessarily drive, some of them don't necessarily speak English. So it's hard for the person who they spend most of the time with to take them out about, because she's got to do so many chores and on all the housework before her husband arrives home. And then also there's the cultural barriers and the religious barriers. Where will they go? They're so young. And then again, financial as well. If you want to go into town, you need money to go into town. You need that, the bus fare. You need money to maybe go to Mackey's or something. So it's a combination of loads of things. But I think most of it is to do with culture and the barriers that the culture puts upon you, because they're probably come from areas and roads where everybody knows who they are. So if so and so's daughter's going out of that area, then the whole road's going to know about it, and that could have a negative effect on the family.
It's crazy, isn't it, to think that sometimes people are so worried about what people are going to say that it limits so much of what you're able to do, because you're worried about, such and such's daughter was there, and that whole idea of izzat, and who carries your izzat, and whose duty is it to do that. So it's such a huge part of our culture and our identity, and it's kind of breaking that down and saying, if your girl is educated, if she's at university, if she's studying to be a professional, that's something to be incredibly proud of. Like, I was speaking to somebody and she was saying, my mum, when she talks about me, the thing that she boasts about is that I'm married to a doctor. Like, just think about that. you don't boast about this person being an incredible woman or that she's a change maker or, you know, she does so much brilliant stuff. It's the fact that you're married to somebody as a doctor. So, you know, just kind of changing our society view of women in education. Like, I guess I'm in my late 30s now. Wow. I'm in my late 30s, but I was one of very few who went off to university. I lived outside. I went to uni. I learned so much in terms of life skills about myself. And my dad thought that was really important for us. He was like, go out to uni. You'll learn how to live. You'll learn how to be yourself. You'll learn how to manage your money. You'll learn how to negotiate so many aspects of your time and doing that. And there's so much value that's attached to that. But also, like, when you're stuck and you're doing something, like, you can't pick up the phone to, you know, somebody and just go, can you sort this out for me? You've got to negotiate that. And that's that life building skills. So, you know, education does so much more than just teach you something. It addresses so many aspects of your life, and we're taking that away from girls and women, and we're always going to be in this space, aren't we, where we're always going, if we take that aspect of education away, the next generation of our women are going to struggle to drive. The next generation are going to struggle to be literate, to help their children at school, to be able to read to them, to be able to go to parents' evening. You know, you're a mum yourself. Like, you were there, right? You were there for your son. You were there for every aspect of your life. Can you imagine, like, not doing that and missing out on his journey? Like, that would be incredibly sad. So, like, it's so empowering to be able to be a part of that next generation and to be better. But, you know, what are your thoughts? Like, what was your parents' view? You can WhatsApp the show and you can join in. You will obviously remain anonymous. The number is 0744 04 20432. I'll say that again. 0744 04 20432. I said that nice and slow because last time my mum said I did it far too fast, and she was like, well, people need to go and get paper and write it down. But you can go onto the website. You can message directly from there. That comes into the studio and we can share that with our listeners. So let's go back to our experience of growing up and our motivation to be educated and how that's going to have an impact on empowering women. So on my social media, as I do often, I'll ask the question, what was your experience of growing up? What was your experience and your parents' view on education? And somebody who I know who has gone into incredible strengths in terms of her business, she said, I didn't have role models growing up, so I decided to be my own. So she had nobody that she could look up to and be like, that's incredible what she does. You know, she was probably in a very male-dominated industry, and she still isn't. She works in a male-dominated industry. And she would often not see the women representing her, people that didn't look like her, people that didn't come from her background, that didn't do the sort of things she wanted. So she went off and did that. And she's an incredible role model. She goes out and she makes things happen in a way that are really inspiring. You know, she'll look at, I really want to make that happen. And that's what she does. You know, she's really honest. She's really open about her journey. She'll talk about the mistakes that she'll make. She'll talk about the things that you have to fall down in order to rise again, and you rise stronger, right? So much of her journey was about, I didn't see anybody, you know. And I guess what you're saying is what you do with the Rising Girl program is you show them, like, this is somebody that's walked your shoes. This is somebody that's done it. Another person that I'd spoken to, she talked about the fact that her mum didn't have an education growing up, and therefore she always pushed the education for her own daughter. So she said, my mum didn't have the opportunity to attend university. It was really difficult when she was younger. There was that expectation to get married, right? It was just the instant, like, you're 18 now. We need to start thinking about, you know, getting you married. It's a matter of our honour. We don't want you to, you know, get old and sort of, you know, go out of date almost. So her mom didn't get a chance to pursue her interest, so in what she wanted to do. But what this person did was her mum made it happen in the way that she would. She liked being in schools, so she went and developed that interest in schools. So when she had children herself, she made it her number one priority to make sure that her kids got the education that she didn't have. So she wanted to make sure that if her daughters and her sons got married, that they would be in a situation that if things weren't great, they always had options. And that's what education does, doesn't it? It gives you options. Like, just have a think about that. Education gives you options. It gives you a choice. You know, you have the option of going on maternity leave for as long as you want and going back to work. You have the option of saying, I'm just as balanced in this situation as you are. You know, you have the option of making choices about you, about your partner, about your family life, and that's what it does. So I guess that's such a gift that this mum has given to her daughter. She couldn't have the gift of education herself. She's gifted her children that chance, and she said, I want you to have a better life, so you have that choice. So the way that she passed that on is that she always made sure that she prioritised their schoolwork, and she taught her so much about having the best start in life, and lots of things like she encouraged her to be creative in her writing. And her daughter now she works in lots of other industries. You know, she works with her dad. She pursued her career, and it's really sad because in her community, like a lot of the people, she's in her early 30s, a lot of the people find it really difficult because she's got an incredible education. They're like, but you're still not married. Like,
I know.
It's crazy, isn't it?
You hear it so often, and you know what? Parts of her story kind of ring bells with my kind of similar upbringing, because my mom, I mean, bless her, she got married when she was 16. She was obviously originally from Pakistan. She never really went to school. She did probably a couple of years in primary education. So she literally, I guess she came here illiterate, although she doesn't like us ever saying that to her. It doesn't look nice. So she was very much encouraging on her daughters getting education. Obviously, we have one brother as well, but he's always the ladla, so we got pushed and he got pushed as well, but if he did badly it was all right, you know, because he's the king, as boys were then. They were literally brought up to be kings. And
we're going to come back to that. I think that's a really important point. Keep going.
And so literally, instead of saying come down and make roti, or come on, let me teach you how to do this, she's like, go upstairs and go and do your homework. We used to go upstairs. They used to put the radio on, but she didn't know that. But yeah, that's literally what we did. But she's and for us to get a degree was like such a proud moment for her and my dad, because for my dad as well, although he's not illiterate, because he came up here in this country at such a young age, his priority was to work and earn and send money back home. So for him, it was almost a dream to have a degree, but he never did. But he was like, you know, even now, if someone, you know, he reads things, he's always watching the news, he's very interested. And I think at the back of his mind, he always wished that I wish I had a degree. Maybe I would have done better in life. Although he's done really great, he's got an MBE by the Queen, but he literally had to do it the other way around, the much harder way around, where he just worked his way to where he is right now. But yeah, for my mom, it was such a proud moment. And literally they put you know, your picture goes up in the front room. This is my daughter. And then when my sister got her degree, it was the same thing. So I think in our own khandan, initially, I think we were and my parents are the youngest out of all the brothers and sisters. We were the ones that got the degrees first, and did well, and then the others kind of followed suit. So for them, it was a really proud moment that we did so well, and hence for me, I think I'm such an advocate for education, because it really does change your life. It literally takes a person from zero to hero.
Love that.
There's a phrase for you. But it could transform a life. So if you're poverty stricken and you've been given an education, you can literally lift yourself out of poverty just through that education and knowledge and skills.
That's so true. That's so true. Going back to other people's upbringing, another participant, she said, education was massively pushed by my mother. We had private tutors from a young age. She goes, I remember doing entrance exams for various schools, even before my parents could actually afford it. And my mum used it as a way to kind of train us, I suppose. And this probably came from my mum never having gone to school. She wasn't able to read, write in English or Urdu or Arabic. So she was completely illiterate. She was brought over to the country in the 70s in an arranged marriage. She never wanted to get married. But she knew that was pretty much her only option. So she was the catalyst that created that change in her daughter. And I guess it's so much in terms of so much of it about, you know, you have to be a strong woman to raise a strong woman. And that's what's happening, isn't it? We've been brought up by this huge sort of army of mums and women that want better for their own daughters and their own children, and they're doing that. Right, we've just had a message coming in saying, hi Shareen, absolutely amazing, loving the show, love tuning in and listening to the very relevant topic. Keep up the good work. It's not my mum, by the way, if you were and my mum, so no, it's not her. Thank you very much. That's really kind of you to say. So we are thinking now then, you raise a point about your brother was the ladla in your house. Now, in my house, like, I don't think that was the case. My brother had it tough. Like, the expectation was huge on him. You know, he had to be a son. he was the eldest son, so there was that expectation of, look, you step up like one of the adults. So he was really expected. I think my dad was, I guess, tougher on him because he expected him to do more and to know more and to, be a really good role model like for his sisters and to kind of take that ownership. And my dad, worked really long, hard hours and needed my brother to kind of step up. But there is very much that understanding in our community of, oh, our boys, it's okay, don't worry, we'll send them to the best schools and we'll do all the rest of it. But, with the girls, have you done the Hondi? Have you done this? Have you done that? Okay, so there was that huge expectation, and that's something we've really got to break down. We've really got to address that in our society of the way that we speak to girls and boys and how that's different, the way that we raise them when they're little, and, the difference that they can make. We're quickly approaching an ad break. During the adverts, you've got a chance to WhatsApp the show. Tell us your opinion. What do you think? What was your upbringing like? And how have you changed in the way that you raise your children? What do you pick from your upbringing that you use in your kids? But what have you changed? What have you done to make it better for them, to make it different? And, have you got a story to inspire? Welcome back to Raising Positive Women with Shareen Ellahi and my guest who's in the studio today, Em from Rising Girls. Today we've been talking about empowering girls and women through education and inspiring the next generation to be more educated, to be more learnt, to be better skilled so they can contribute to our society and build a future generation which is more positive. So we've talked a lot about your project in terms of the girls that you work with in inner city schools and how you've made them aware of the value of education and not just of early education but continuing education. So let's think about a little bit more about some of the work that you do outside of Birmingham and the Midlands and raising that profile of education within the Pakistani community in Pakistan. The reason I say this is because last year I went on a charity trip to the outskirts of Islamabad, where we met a school that was doing incredible work, and they took a lot of poor children and they used a lot of zakat funding to support the children within this school. And what we did was we looked at the impact that the education had on the boys and girls in this school. We knew that the boys would get educated, but our main focus, both as a charity, we looked at what do we do to, to raise the standards for that community, because it's fine being able to give through charity and supporting, say, building, putting food on the table and building wells and doing all of those works. But in order to plan for the future, what are we doing to help Pakistan come out of poverty in the future? What are we doing and what can we do now to sow those seeds that in 20 years' time we're not having to pay money so people can eat their next meal? And we're not having to pay money so people can, get access to clean water and to get all of that. What are we doing? How are we creating a change? So going to Pakistan, we went to visit this school. And what we found was that there was the same number of boys that were educated in this school as there were girls. There was no segregation in this school, so they taught all the girls and boys together in the same classroom, and there was no hierarchy, so they didn't favour the boys over the girls. There weren't things like, the boys got to get and do something first. Everybody was equal in that school. And that for me was the reason I wanted to work with this particular project, because I felt like they kind of understood the fact that, girls are just as important. And one of the things that really stuck out to me was the head teacher, who was a woman, had said that there was a girl at this school who was the chowkidar's daughter. And a chowkidar, for anybody that doesn't know, he's the groundsman. He's the guy that opens the gate and closes the gate, very poorly paid. But the benefit of him taking this job in this school was the fact that his daughter got a free education there. So he enrolled the daughter in school. He became the chowkidar. The girl went to school. Every year she did incredibly well. And then the next year she would trump the boys. The next year she would do better in the board exams. The following year she would do even better and even better. And by the time that she had finished her education through that school, she had got the best scores in the whole of the borough, in the whole of the board. She'd done the best in her board exams. And when we all got together to have a photo taken and, to kind of mark the moment, I remember she had this smile on, this uber confident smile, just to kind of say, yeah, I've made it. Like, and she was, if I guess in terms of society, she was a nobody, wasn't she? She was, in terms of, she was just a guy that opens and closes the gate. It was his daughter. What was she destined to be? Yet she's gone on to university, and the person that sponsors her through university is he's a very well-educated doctor in the Midlands, and he pays for her university fees, and because he feels so passionate about her going on to university and having a role and having a career and giving back to her society. So she's a real change maker in that community, because like a lot of the girls that you kind of bring to the playing field, you're showing you can just be a girl from Birmingham that goes on to do incredible things. You know, you can be a taxi driver's daughter. You don't have to be born with a silver spoon in your mouth and do all of that. And so for a lot of breaking those barriers down in Pakistan, it's about kind of getting them at grassroots level. One of the other projects that we looked at was in a hospital. We work with a hospital there, and in this project they were looking at the nutrition levels of children that came into the hospital. And when they tracked the research, they found that the girls were hugely malnutritioned in comparison to the boys, because the boys need to grow up, they need to be strong, they need to work in the fields, they need to, you know, bring in an income for their families. Your girls, you're going to marry off. They're not your responsibility once they're married, are they? So they would provide good nutrition for their boys versus their girls. And what this hospital was saying was, no, that's completely wrong, because you can't do that. They are just as important. So we funded a project where girls were given high quality nutrition, and it was sad because some of the mums would have to bring their girls into the hospital and feed them at the hospital because they were so worried about the fact they were going to go home. And it was often their mother-in-laws who would say, why are you feeding her? You know, you've got a high calorie nutritional drink or a bar there, like give it to your son, you know. So it's breaking down those barriers and making sure the next generation of women that are having children aren't brought up and aren't married being malnutrition themselves, because that's what was happening. There was just the constant cycle of, you know, nobody ever broke the chain. It was one girl was malnutrition growing up. She grew up, and malnutrition has a huge impact on your mental ability as well and your cognitive ability. So she was growing up and she couldn't learn and she couldn't do all those things, and she was married off, malnutritioned, having children who were malnutritioned, and then she didn't know enough about good nutrition herself. Like, they were very illiterate in terms of things like weaning. They didn't understand that when a baby is weaned, how you do that, you know, and breaking down those barriers of the value of, they used to think like if you gave your child meat and if you gave your family meat, you were doing the best for them. Whereas we know that vitamins and minerals are in abundance in vegetables, in sag, in lentils, things that you can grow from your own you know, your own back garden, all those sort of things. So it was kind of readdressing that. And we talked earlier a little bit about you wanted to raise positive women in Pakistan and you wanted to do more work in that. Why? Where do you see this going, and why do you think it's important to invest your efforts into raising education values in Pakistan for women?
So one of the reasons that I really wanted to do something in Pakistan, a program in Pakistan, is, you know, because of my heritage, but also because about 3 or 4 years ago now, before Rising Girl was started, I actually went to Pakistan with another charity and a charity trip, and I ended up in a school in Rollercoat in Kashmir. And if you know Rollercoat, it's almost like Switzerland. It's beautiful. It's got big mountains all surrounding it, but it's not as developed as somewhere like Switzerland. Anyway, I ended up on this school on this hilltop, and then I saw all the girls, and when I walked in, I wanted to blend in, so I was wearing salwar kameez and everything. I thought, I'm going to blend in, they won't know I'm from outside. Straight away they did.
Of course, it's from the way you walk, apparently. You know, have you ever heard that? They go, you can always tell the person that's from England from the way she walks.
Absolutely. So as soon as I walked in, they knew I was from outside, and they literally like crowded me like I was Madonna. I literally felt like I was some sort of superstar, and I'm like, okay, what's going on here? Then I you know, I started to talk to them, and I said, look, what do you want to do, you know, in your future? What do you want to do? And, you know, do you want to, and they looked at me really confused and puzzled, and these were teenage girls, and they said, well, we're going to finish our schooling, and then we're probably going to get married and have children. And I'm like, really? And then they started asking me, what do you do? So I told them, you know, outside of my work with Rising Girl, I'm a journalist, and this is how I became a journalist, and these are the people I've met. And they were like, wow. And then I said, but can we do that? And then I said, of course you can. I said, you could be a teacher, a doctor, a journalist, anything you want to be, you can be that person. And they didn't have anyone to tell them that that is allowed, that is something that they can accomplish. And literally, I spent 20 minutes with these girls, and that's it. And by the end of the 20 minutes, I would say more than 90% of them were literally saying, right, I'm going to be a teacher now. The other one was like, right, I'm going to learn to ride a motorbike. Literally things that they never thought were possible for a girl. And all of them had aspirations, which they never had. And I didn't give them anything, but I gave them my time. And the difference that made was absolutely amazing. So I just thought that's kind of how Rising Girl started. I ended up making a film with one of the girls there, a 4-minute film which went viral. Her name was Sonia. And Sonia literally lived right at the top of the mountain. And she had to climb on top of the mountain, literally hand on hand. It was like a really difficult journey. And she said, sometimes I pass snakes and all these kind of things, but I know that if I don't come to school, my family would be destitute. And I thought, oh my goodness me. And so I said, can I come up with you? Oh my goodness. It was the most difficult trek I've ever done. I went up, I made that film, I showed how difficult her life was, because her father was disabled, her mother was illiterate, she was the eldest, and she said, I want to be a doctor. So I made her film, came back, had some film premieres, got amazing people like Baroness Barcy and MPs to tweet about her and talk about their own rising stories, because although they're amazing, successful people now, they've all come through struggles to get to where they need to be. And then that's Sonia is why I started Rising Girl, because I thought, this girl's risking life and limb to get to school, and so many people have that opportunity, but unfortunately they drop out of school. So that's why Rising Girl started, and then we wanted to do something in Pakistan that isn't already being done. We'd rather support great causes that are sponsoring girls to go to school rather than doing it ourselves, because there's so many charities that are doing that.
You're completely right.
Yeah, so we went to the largest women's university, we did a mass survey, we did loads of research, we spoke to the government, we spoke to academics, and then we said, look, what are the obstacles that are stopping girls that are leaving university, not being financially independent, not having a career? Because what you'll see in Pakistan is, and this is like an amazing kind of thing, there's something like 65% of all university graduates in Pakistan are actually female. They're actually topping the males, which is great. So they're empowered enough to get to university, but when they leave university, most of them will drop out of the system. They will not have a job, they won't have a career, they will not be able to support themselves financially, and that's kind of where we're stepping in. We built an 8-week program similar to the one in that we have in the UK, and the lecturers will deliver that program to empower them over their obstacles, so that financial, cultural, religious, whatever their obstacles are, the abuse they're suffering, this is how you overcome your obstacles. And one of the big things in Pakistan is, it's big here but it's massive over there, is they don't have these positive role models that are working in banks, our solicitors, our lawyers, who are just like them. So we're bringing in these women so that they can have that mentoring session to be inspired. And I read a statistic somewhere that Pakistan GDP would go up by something phenomenal. I think it's over 150 million a year if there were more women in the workforce, because at the moment only around 22 to 24% of Pakistan's workforce is actually made up of women, which is the lowest in the world.
But not just in Pakistan, I guess here, like if we encourage girls to work, if we encourage girls to get an education, to do professional jobs, ultimately it's the family that benefits, doesn't it?
Absolutely.
If you've got mum and dad working, you're in a better financial position. Okay, I know traditionally we've always assumed that mums need to stay home to raise their kids, etc. But ultimately, your self-worth comes from your identity. Like me, I'm a teacher. I'm through and through. I'm a primary school teacher. And that for me was my identity. When I kind of started my maternity leave, I knew my role at that time was to be a mum. I was raising my daughter. But I knew eventually I was going to need to engage back and go back into the workplace. So I felt like me again, and it was my identity. And I had the thing that I worked hard for. I went to university. I did a degree for 4 years. I had to go to school placements. I had to do all of that. That's my journey. Nobody gave me that. And, likewise, like moving on, it is my identity. So, and I contribute to our family life. I contribute in lots of different ways. Like my husband couldn't teach. He couldn't teach our daughters. I do that, but what he contributes are in different ways. So I think in terms of like leveling that playing field and making people realise the benefit of how much better their life would be if their daughter-in-laws worked, and if their wives and their partners worked, and there was more of an understanding of that. It's better all round. But I guess once again, like, having that education gives you the option. Do you want to work part-time? Do you not want to? Your children are going to be better off if you work and if you have a career and if you have a job, because they've got now a role model, they've got aspiration. Like, my youngest daughter, she was 3 and she couldn't say the word university, but my 3-year-old knew what a university was.
Oh, bless her.
Because it's just an expectation of, you're going to go to university one day. And her question was always like, can I stay out late? Will I be able to stay awake past 7 o'clock? So it's just, it's a huge sort of benefit to our society.
Absolutely,
you're completely right. But in terms of making that change, because girls are going to come across barriers, right? They're going to have a husband who's probably like, yeah, you've got a job, we've got married, you don't need to work anymore, I'll look after you.
Yeah.
Or a mother-in-law of, why are you going out to work? Raise your kids. Who's looking after your children? Nobody does a better job than you. Like, why are you not looking after them? Or you've got people doing that. But how do we get over that? Like, that isn't going to happen, now. It's not going to happen in the next 5 years. For me, I think that's going to happen in the future by raising that ability of our society to think differently. We talked a little bit about sort of research, and I was speaking to another change maker who she'd asked for some research to be done in terms of, she wanted to know at what age in your adult life or in your whole life do you learn about empathy? Do you learn about understanding from different people? Do you learn about being a better person, about being kind, about being a good person? And she went off to Harvard Uni, and when they came back with the research, they said it was between the ages of 3 and 5. Between the age of 3 and 5, whatever you learn as a person, whatever you learn, the skills that you learn about empathy, about understanding other people, about being kind, about sharing, about your values, pretty much are going to be your blueprint of an adult. So if you learn those things up until the age of 5, after 5, you're pretty much stuck that way. Okay? So that's why early education is so vital, because whatever you teach your children between 3 and 5 is going to be the way that they are. So those future husbands, those future women, we kind of have to catch them now. Like, we have to do that with our kids. We have to teach our children now to be better people. We have to teach them to empathise. We have to teach them to understand other people's point of view, to know how to speak up, to be confident, to be, to make that difference now. So then in 20 years' time, 30 years' time, when they're parents, it's effortless. It's just the norm to be that way. And so we've got to do that by having mums and having girls and families that understand that value of education, of early education, of having the access to education. And Rising Girl does that. You're making people aware of it. And I know the work that you do is really well thought of in the community and raising that awareness. But what can people do then, in terms of, if you've got girls that are out there that kind of are interested in, working or moving forward in terms of their education, what can they do?
I think, first of all, they should identify their barrier and then try and align their barrier with the help that's out there, because there's a lot of help out there, but unfortunately not everyone knows where to tap into that help. So not a lot of people know this, because they see my profile and they must think, oh, life was pretty easy for me. But I got married when I was still at university in Birmingham, so I didn't leave the house like you did. And then I had to transfer, and I had to go up to university up north, and then I had to do an extra year because I couldn't find an exact course. And then I, unfortunately suffered domestic violence through my marriage, hence it ended. But at that time, I didn't know that was domestic violence, what I just experienced, and B, where to go for any help. And I think that was one of the major issues when we were growing up, because a lot of girls didn't even realise that these issues are actually issues, and B, there's help out there. And now there's so much help out there. So A, I would try and what I would say is try and get the help to overcome your barriers, and you can get in touch with us. We're all over social media, and then we can guide you and tell you where to get that help. B, what we're trying to do because of COVID-19 is take a lot of our program online, so that it's not just available for girls that are in schools, but it's available to all girls, so that even if you're not in a school environment, or you're not, our program isn't running in your school called Rise Together, you can actually go online and then you can do the program yourself in your own time, so you would learn so many skills and develop that way. But also I would try and find a mentor. One thing I found in life is, I do this through my work situation, I try and find a woman that I think I want to be like, or a woman who I know will help and support me through a journey and get me to the route that I want to go to. And I would really, really emphasize the importance of having that female mentor, because I think that's so fundamental and it's helped me a lot in my life. But I always think that if your door doesn't open, keep trying, or try a different door, because maybe your route is not supposed to be a straight route. Maybe it's supposed to go around in a bit of a circle before you actually realize your kind of path in life and how you get to where you need to get to. But I would always say never ever give up. It's determination. You do not understand how hard I've worked to get to where I need to get to, and it's all because I've been determined. But always get the help. I always think get the help, and praying has helped me a lot as well. Literally sitting on a prayer mat and just praying is literally helps you so much, especially with mental illness as well, or if you're feeling a bit down. And these days I'm sure that's quite a lot of people are feeling a bit down because they're locked up.
I think that's so important. So many people can relate to that, that feeling of you don't know where to go to get help, and you don't know how to see yourself out of a situation. And I think kind of breaking down the stigma that's attached to mental health and to going out and getting help and looking for, right, where can I get support? And there's no shame now in asking for help. And I think when you get over that and you realise that there's so many different avenues that are there for you. And what's also really nice is that I found that over the, growing up, over probably the last, I don't know how many years, but there's been a real shift in the way that women behave towards other women. At one point, it used to be quite catty, and you had to really be careful. And I think in the community as well, I think going on from this whole like, look at her, what's such and such's daughter doing, and that gossip and that sort of negative backstabbing sometimes, it would happen in families and in communities. Moving on from that, I think as women, we're now rising above it, aren't we? We're looking at each other and going, I'm there for you. If you ever need a chat, or, if you need something, like, let me help you. I, as a teacher, an ethnic minority teacher in schools, I didn't come across many other girls that were like me. I worked in Worcestershire, everyone was a white face. If I ever saw a brown face, I'd go out my way to help them in any way I could, because it was about supporting the cause. And it was like, if I'm doing well, I want you to do well. I'm not going to get any better by bringing you down. Like, I want you to succeed just as much as me, and so I always go out of my way to help girls in the community, to help women in any way that I can, to be there for them. And, I think that network of strong women and that network of people around that are there to support each other is going to make a huge impact on, our attitudes to our society, our attitudes to women, and making that change. So we're not carrying on in this whole attitude of, oh, did you see such and such a daughter, and she was wearing this and she was doing that, and that person isn't married and she's in her 30s, and oh, that girl got divorced, can you believe that? And I think breaking
we have moved
that down
away from that, because every household has a divorce now. It's like commonplace. But when I was in that situation, it wasn't. So I was the local gossip, the national gossip.
It's sad.
I had to go through that to get to the situation I'm in today. But I absolutely agree with you. I think especially during this time and during Ramadan and during COVID-19, there is a lot more kindness out there. People are being a lot nicer to people, and you can actually approach people that you never thought would actually come back to you, because people have the time now to come back to you and try and help and support you. So I do think now is a really good time to reach out for that help.
That's fantastic. I think that's really important. So what you're saying is, if you're in a situation where you want to continue your education, you're struggling, you're coming across barriers, find out what you're struggling with, go out and look for that help.
Absolutely.
Okay. So just going back to the messages, we've had lots of really positive messages coming in. Somebody saying, enjoying listening to such an important subject that is often not spoken about. And this is the best
And
bit.
well done, you, Shareen.
It says you're absolutely fantastic, Shareen. Not my husband, by the way, in the message. Another message says, great topic. It's so sad to hear that things like this happen. It's heartbreaking to hear the inequality, and it's true, isn't it? Until we address it, until we say this is wrong, this has to change, we have to develop as a community. We have to think better. We have to do better. We're always going to be in this situation.
Absolutely.
So what else where would you want to see, let's just say 20 years time, what would you love, Pakistani girls, the Asian community, where do you want us? What would you envisage for us?
Wow, 20 years' time, I'll probably have a couple of walking sticks with me.
You look amazing. What are you talking about?
I honestly think that in 20 years' time, if we could hit that education level where all women, Muslim Pakistani women, or any women who, especially those disadvantaged women, are suffering and can get a really good education and achieve their ambitions, we would be in a really good place. Places like Pakistan, for example, if we can get these women who are going through university to get into the workforce, even half of them, their GDP will raise tremendously, and that will have a knock-on effect on all the disadvantaged people in that country, and where there's a lot, poverty is mass. I don't need to tell anyone, but the poverty in Pakistan is huge. So if even half of those women that we're trying to work with go and become financially independent, and that could have a knock-on effect on not just their community but the whole nation, and that whole country can raise and they can lift themselves up from being a third world country, from being a developing country. The world can actually see them as a really promising country who are supporting women, because it is women who move countries forward. It is women who actually are basically what do they call, the backbone of a country,
of course, yeah.
And not just of a family. And I just think that if we can get over that. But I have noticed that although a lot more women are becoming empowered, getting into education, following their career, mental health is becoming a very, very, very big issue, and that's another barrier that they're actually trying to face, and it comes in many vices, and that's something else that is really important that we've actually built into our programs, because it's not spoken about very much in our culture and in our religion. It's such a taboo. But I just think that you really need to try and overcome your obstacles. Find what it is that you need to do. You could be doing mantras, you could be praying, you could be speaking to someone. And honestly, I have to say this, hand on my heart, when you speak to someone, especially that someone who you look up to, and they give you great advice back, that time really changes your life. And the other thing that I've recently embraced is gratitude. We're not that grateful. I know it sounds awful, but we're really not that grateful. Instead of saying, why haven't I got this? Why haven't I achieved this? Why is she doing better than I am? What we need to do is say thank you for what I do have, because it is far more than what somebody else has.
Fantastic. I think that's such an important point. So we're approaching the end of the show. Thank you for listening today. Thank you, Em, for donating your time, coming in and sharing your incredible journey with us.
You're very welcome.
And all the work that you do. If you want to find out more, they can go to the Rising Girl website. And I hope today's given you food for thought and made you think about the role and the importance of education